As-salamu alaykum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello everyone, my name's Amin. I've put this presentation together in response to an invite down to meet some of you who work at the food bank, and that invite came off the back of an email I sent where I asked whether I could provide some tomatoes that I grow here at home to some of your food bank users, in particular families with children. And I also raised this question and asked what people would think if there was land available and we could set up allotments for food bank users to work, and also ourselves. Well, this is an artist's rendition here of a particular way to grow food. It's called it's mound growing. It's a German technique called hugelkultur, and it's something I'll talk about a bit later in terms of how I'm using it. But the thing that screams out to me from this picture is this word abundance and creating abundance. But before I go on to discuss that, I just want to introduce you to a little short video in the next slide which outlines Project Tomato, as I've called it, which runs you through my grow setup here and how I'm approaching the growing of tomatoes. As-salamu alaykum. So I thought I'd just run you through my tomato growing setup. So inside, as you can see, I have some indoor growing going on as well for tomatoes in different stages, bolstered by a LED light. So I'm experimenting to see where I can get great production, whether it's going to be out in the polytunnel, which I'll show you shortly, or in here in the conservatory, which has been doing really well. And as you can see, we're starting to get some now. So I'll just give you one more shot on that. Soon I'll be getting some more seedlings going, so we can get a proper production line going. I'm not sure how long these are going to take to ripen, but it shouldn't be too long until I can bring some down. So I'll put this on pause now and take you out to the polytunnel. So we're out in the polytunnel. Let you have a look here. As you can see, these ones aren't developed as ones indoors. That's the power of grow lights, starting off earlier. As you can see on the bottom there, these are all seedlings from the last grow last year, where tomatoes have just fallen off and self-fertilised, so I'll be removing them. So I have a whole load of other plants in here as well. And as the summer goes on, we'll be going all the way up these canes. And again, hopefully I'll be able to produce enough to share out. It's a bit hot in here, so what I'm going to do is put you on pause, give it a water, and then show you one last space that I'm experimenting with to see where I can get the most produce, see what it's like. So let me just give you one more tour there. So we tend to have kind of a hands-off approach to growing, which some do. Here's our garden here, well, our front garden. And just here is where I'm experimenting with how well these will grow out here. And if these start to develop fruit soon, we'll also be putting some more plants around here. Because I'm trying to think about what it's like to grow in a place where you don't have much land, where pretty much you've just got like a little yard. And one thing I've noticed about if you're getting it and you're getting sunlight, brickwork will give back heat at night and really keep the frost off these tomatoes and help you get nice ripe fruit. So we will be planting some more in here to try and keep our production line growing. As I'll show you in the presentation later, there are some other little techniques you can do to grow vertically in confined spaces, because they're very nice to see community grow. So you have a collection of houses people can go to, and well, my aim would be to do a bowl of salad, so people literally can just pick it from the vine if those houses are agreeing. For example, I'll take you over here. This used to be just a lawn, and obviously I'm putting a cherry tree here. But this is all wild lettuce here, which has gone to flower, and it go to seed, and then it just spreads out. And at the back there, you can see the lettuce, and then it will slowly spread around the garden. So I've got a nice little patch of lettuce here. Just earlier today, one of my neighbours came round and asked if he could pick some lettuce. A couple of neighbours, I said, just come round. You know, I pointed out which plants are lettuce, and they just pick their own from our garden if they fancy a salad at night or for lunch. So this is quite a peppery lettuce here, and as I say, because it's not a hybrid seed, right, it will self-seed itself and spread, and this stuff grows quickly. So I've got my raspberries here, my soft fruits. They're wonderful. If I saw in the garden on the mosque, just at the front, it'd be nice to have some soft fruit. They can just go in and pick it themselves. So here's some more lettuce here, which we're grabbing. I'm going to pick some later to eat. And as I say, it's quite nice to have abundance. Try and set up your grow system so it will be self-propagating, and then people can just come and pick it as and when they need it. So that's what I want to show you here, and hopefully I'll take you through a few slides. I'm a bit sad like that with my PowerPoint presentations. Alright, chat to you soon. So, as you can see in the left-hand picture, the type of tomatoes I'm growing are Songold F1. Now, that's a hybrid plant. If you recall in the video you just watched, my wild lettuce is a non-hybrid plant. That means it will produce seed by itself, propagate, and then when it grows will produce a half-decent crop. With a hybrid plant, you can't really do that. What tends to happen is the seeds produced by the tomatoes either won't germinate and produce a plant, and if they do, the fruit won't be any good, or if it produces any fruit at all. So why have I chosen this type of tomato? Well, it's a very reliable crop, but what is more, the tomatoes it produces are very, very sweet. They've got a slight smoky flavour as well. And when I was trying to think about what to grow, I wanted something easy and something that was very tasty and that kids would love, really draw people into eating fresh food and perhaps having a go at growing their own. So how am I going to bring them down to you? Well, if you look at the middle picture, I'm using organic paper cuts, a bit of cling film on top, and a label saying wash before eating and good for kids, that type of thing. Now those cups can either be returned to me or recycled. If they're returned to me, I can then recycle them in my compost bin and turn them into tomatoes for the next year's grow. So God willing, if you look at the picture on the right, I'll be able to fill an entire box of cups of tomato to hand out. That's my hope. And hopefully I might be able to bring down 2 boxes this grow season. You know, I'm not the best gardener in the world and I'm still getting used to it. Now they can be stored at room temperature for 24 hours easily. And I know you guys have got a lot of basement space that's dark, they'll be good down there. And if it gets particularly hot, I can always use ice packs as well. So just how many tomatoes can I grow this year? Well, not as many as I would like as I perfect my techniques. I've only got a small space. And when I look at this image here and think of this word abundance, this particular way to grow food that integrates into the environment, what I did was I decided to convert my entire garden space into something like this. However, it takes a while, as you'll see in the next slides, for the soil to settle and for everything to get set up. So as we go from season to season, I'm hoping to produce more and more. Now I don't have the money to buy land, but what I am doing in November is setting up a charity, putting what little money I have, my university maintenance grant, I found a bank account, so then try and seek funding streams to see if I can get to the stage where I can buy a bit of land and set something like this up. But what I want to do first is just show you the type of setup I have here in my wider garden and what I've done, how I've tried to set up a mound growing method, and in German we call this Hügelkultur. So what is Hügelkultur? Essentially it's mound growing, so your aim is to create a mound of organic material, to let it decompose, to regenerate the soil and then to grow on top of that. It forms like a hedge-like type of structure whereby you can grow up the vertical face of it as well as the top as well. So what I did in my garden was I bought some cheap oak sleepers. I couldn't afford the expensive ones, they're cracking already, just so I could use it to frame the garden, so I could raise it a good 20-30 centimetres or so. I then mapped out a L-shaped curve so that I could follow the path of the sunlight and make sure it's got as much sunlight as possible. And then I set to digging a big ditch. You have a look at the picture on the right, that's about halfway through. Underneath those sticks and twigs, you will find a trench where I took some logs and I buried them in the ground. And that's happened on that entire space, that entire L shape. I then put some grass clippings and compost in. And then for the next layer, I put smaller sticks and twigs, and then took the turf, turned it upside down and placed that on top. Now the finished product, you'll see in the next slide, I just want to draw your attention to the cardboard I've used as well to contour the shape, and also to cover the grass to make sure it wouldn't grow back through again. Now the great advantage to this particular technique is that it's low maintenance, it will last a very long time, and it's far more environmentally friendly. We would call it a permaculture technique if you're familiar with that term, and it will last for years as everything breaks down and feeds back into the soil. So on the next slide I'll show you the finished product. So as you can see, my mound's not as tall as some of the other ones you saw in that beautiful artist rendition. However, as time goes on, I'll be building up higher and higher. But you also might know I put down bark chip on the rest of the garden as well. Now bark chip also breaks down, improves soil quality. It's unfortunate that this year I can't get many plants in, so it's only just gone in. And what tends to happen with bark chip is it takes nitrogen out of the soil first as it breaks down and then gives it back. So this year, in terms of how many tomatoes I can produce and how much food I can produce, I'm quite limited until the soil settles and that chemistry occurs and the soil suddenly springs to life. But I thought I'd include a shot anyway, just to give you a good idea of where I'm going, and that hopefully next year I might be able to produce different types of crops to bring down too. I really like this little progression of pictures of hugelkultur. Kind of really illustrates how it works and how it just gets better and better as the years go on. So top left, that's the garden bed after 1 month after you've just put it in. Now I haven't put a cover crop on top of mine yet, I've yet to put that. The cover crop I'm going to be using is a type of clover, and what that actually does is produces nitrogen in the soil, which hopefully will balance out when the wood breaks down and leaches the nitrogen, same with the bark chip. And when I'm ready to grow, what I do is I take that cover crop and I just dig it over and let it mulch in the soil to give back its nutrients. As you can see, after about 1 year, those logs have started to break down and the root networks from the plants are coming down. Now, if you grow perennial plants that last all year round, that actual root structure, rhizome, is really, really good for the soil, particularly if you've got a tree nearby, because it helps transport the nutrients throughout the entire complex that you've built. As you can see, after 2 years, the wood is breaking down more and more, and then after about 20 years, this is how long these things can last, you've got some really, really good root structure, you've got some great biodiversity, and the soil quality will be absolutely superb. So this is the type of thing I'm moving towards and looking to do in my garden, and hopefully if I'm successful and inshallah I'm able to get some funding streams to buy some land, there's something I'm hoping to set up. Here's another artist's representation of the hugelkultur method. As you can see, it creates these lovely gullies that people can walk down. These lovely little nature walks where on either side you're surrounded by an abundance of food that people can just pick. If you recall the video, Project Tomato, I talked about growing vertically. And as you can see, you actually increase the area over which you grow, particularly if you're working in small spaces, by going upwards. Utilising space and finding places to grow, particularly if one doesn't have access to land, is the focus of the next slide and a video I've included there. The video is a TED talk by a lady called Pam, who founded Incredible Edible in Todmorden. I've met Pam. She's a lovely woman, very, very Yorkshire, and a lovely woman. What I want you to take from this video is to have a look at the diversity of spaces in which they grew food. I don't advocate everything she's saying. Not particularly in the time we're living through, you know, put our swords down and take our flock of sheep and goats to the hills rather than being combative. That's the attitude I have these days. But the other thing I want you to take from that video is when she talks about creating garden walks, little paths around a town where they're growing food everywhere that people can go along and pick food. So when I talked about this idea of having a project, trying to get more households on board, finding spaces where we can grow, to say maybe bowl of salad. So a food bank user and their family knows of these sites and can walk from site to site. And by the time they've done the walk, the food walk, they've got a bowl of salad they can take home. But that takes community involvement and others. It's not something I can just do by myself. But anyway, we'll move on to the next slide, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of the ideas Pam brings to the table.
The will to live life differently can start in some of the most unusual places. This is where I come from, Todmorden. It's a market town in the north of England, 15,000 people, between Leeds and Manchester, fairly normal market town. Used to look like this, and now it's more like this, with fruit and veg and herbs sprouting up all over the place. We call it propaganda gardening. Corner of our railway station car park, front of our health centre, people's front gardens, and even in front of the police station. We've got edible canal towpaths, and we've got sprouting cemeteries. The soil is extremely good. We've even invented a new form of tourism. It's called vegetable tourism. And believe it or not, people come from all over the world to poke around in our raised beds, even when there's not much growing. But it starts a conversation. And you know, we're not doing it because we're bored. We're doing it because we want to start a revolution. We tried to answer this simple question: can you find a unifying language that cuts across age and income and culture that will help people themselves find a new way of living? See spaces around them differently, think about the resource they use differently, interact differently. Can we find that language? And then can we replicate those actions? And the answer would appear to be yes, and the language would appear to be food. So 3.5 years ago, a few of us sat around a kitchen table and we just invented the whole thing. We came up with a really simple game plan that we put to a public meeting. We did not consult, we did not write a report, enough of all that. And we said to that public meeting in Todmorden, look, let's imagine that our town is focused around 3 plates. A community plate, the way we live our everyday lives. A learning plate, what we learn, what we teach our kids in school, and what new skills we share amongst ourselves. And business, what we do with the pound in our pocket, and which businesses we choose to support. Now, let's imagine those plates agitated with community actions around food. If we start one of those community plates spinning, that's really great. That really starts to empower people. But if we can then spin that community plate with the learning plate, and then spin it with the business plate, we've got a real show there. We've got some action theatre. We're starting to build resilience ourselves. We're starting to reinvent community ourselves. And we've done it all without a flipping strategy document. And here's the thing as well. We've not asked anybody's permission to do this, we're just doing it. And we are certainly not waiting for that cheque to drop through the letterbox before we start. And most importantly of all, we are not daunted by the sophisticated arguments that say these small actions are meaningless in the face of tomorrow's problems, because I have seen the power of small actions and it is awesome. So, back to the public meeting. We put that proposition to the meeting, 2 seconds, and then the room exploded. I have never, ever experienced anything like that in my life. And it's been the same in every single room, in every town that we've ever told our story. People are ready and respond to the story of food. They want positive actions they can engage in, and in their bones, they know it's time to take personal responsibility and invest in more kindness to each other and to the environment. And since we had that meeting 3.5 years ago, it's been a heck of a roller coaster. We started with a seed swap, really simple stuff, and then we took an area of land, a strip on the side of our main road, which was a dog toilet basically, and we turned it into a really lovely herb garden. We took the corner of the car park in the station that you saw, and we made vegetable beds for everybody to share and pick from themselves. We went to the doctors. We've just had a £6 million health centre built in Todmorden, and for some reason that I cannot comprehend, it has been surrounded by prickly plants. So we went to the doctors, said, would you mind us taking them up? They said, absolutely fine, provided you get planning permission and you do it in Latin and you do it in triplicate. So we did. And now there are fruit trees and bushes and herbs and vegetables around that doctor's surgery. And there's been lots of other examples, like the corn that was in front of the police station and the old people's home that we've planted up with food that they can pick and grow. But it isn't just about growing, because we all are part of this jigsaw. It's about taking those artistic people in your community and doing some fabulous designs in those raised beds to explain to people what's growing there. Because there's so many people that don't really recognise a vegetable unless it's in a bit of plastic with a bit of an instruction packet on the top. So we have some people who design these things. If it looks like this, please don't pick it, but if it looks like this, help yourself. This is about sharing and investing in kindness. And for those people that don't want to do either of those things, maybe they can cook. So we pick them seasonally, and then we go on the street, or in the pub, or in the church, or wherever people are living their lives. This is about us going to the people and saying, we are all part of the local food jigsaw, we are all part of a solution. And then, because we know we've got vegetable tourists and we love them to bits and they're absolutely fantastic, we thought, what can we do to give them an even better experience? So we invented, without asking of course, the incredible edible green route. And this is a route of exhibition gardens and edible towpaths and bee-friendly sites and the story of pollinators. And it's a route that we designed that takes people through the whole of our town, past our cafes and our small shops, through our market, not just to and fro from the supermarket. And we're hoping that in changing people's footfall around our town, we're also changing their behaviour. And then there's the second plate, the learning plate. Well, we're in partnership with the high school. We've created a company. We are designing and building an aquaponics unit in some land that was spare at the back of the high school, like you do. And now we're going to be growing fish and vegetables in an orchard with bees. And the kids are helping us build that. And the kids are on the board. And because the community was really keen on working with the high school is now teaching agriculture. And because it's teaching agriculture, we started to think, how can we then get those kids that never had a qualification before in their lives but are really excited about growing, how can we give them some more experience? So we got some land that was donated by a local garden centre. It was really quite muddy, but in a truly incredible way, totally voluntary-led, we have turned that into a market garden training centre. And that is polytunnels and raised beds and all the things you need to get the soil under your fingers and think, maybe there's a job in this for me in the future. And because we were doing that, some local academics said, you know, we could help design a commercial horticulture course for you. There's not one that we know of. So they're doing that, and we're going to launch it later this year. And it's all an experiment, and it's all voluntary. And then there's the third plate. Because if you walk through an edible landscape, and if you're learning new skills, and if you start to get interested in what's growing seasonally, you might just want to spend more of your own money in support of local producers. Not just veg, but meat and cheese and beer and whatever else it might be. But then we're just a community group, you know, we're just all volunteers. What could we actually do? So we did some really simple things. We fundraised, we got some blackboards, we put incredible edible on the top, we gave it to every market trader that was selling locally, and they scribbled on what they were selling in any one week. Really popular, people congregated around it, sales were up. And then we had a chat with the farmers and we said, we're really serious about this, but they didn't actually believe us. So we thought, OK, what should we do? I know, if we can create a campaign around one product and show them there is local loyalty to that product, maybe they'll change their mind and see we're serious. So we launched a campaign, because it just amuses me, called Every Egg Matters. And what we did was we put people on our egg map. It's a stylised map of Todmorden. Anybody that's selling their excess eggs at the garden gate, perfectly legally, to their neighbours, we've stuck on there. We started with 4. And we've now got 64 on. And the result of that was that people were then going into shops asking for a local Todmorden egg. And the result of that was some farmers upped the amount of flocks they got of free-range birds, and then they went on to meat birds. And although these are really, really small steps, that increasing local economic Confidence is starting to play out in a number of ways. And we now have farmers doing cheese, and they've upped their flocks of rare breed pigs. They're doing pasties and pies and things that they would have never have done before. We've got increasing market stalls selling local food, and in a survey that local students did for us, 49% of all food traders in that town said that their bottom line had increased because of what we were actually doing. And we're just volunteers, and it's only an experiment. Now, none of this is rocket science. It certainly is not clever, and it's not original. But it is joined up, and it is inclusive. This is not a movement for those people that are going to sort themselves out anyway. This is a movement for everyone. We have a motto: if you eat, you're in. Across age, across income, across culture. It's been really quite a roller coaster experience. But going back to that first question that we asked, is it replicable? Yeah. It most certainly is replicable. More than 30 towns in England now are spinning the incredible edible plates. Whichever way they want to do it, they're of their own volition, they're trying to make their own lives differently. And worldwide, we've got communities across America and Japan. It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, what can you say? America and Japan and New Zealand. People, after the earthquake in New Zealand, visited us in order to incorporate some of this public spiritedness around local growing into the heart of Christchurch. And none of this takes more money, and none of this demands a bureaucracy. But it does demand that you think things differently, and you are prepared to bend budgets and work programmes in order to create that supportive framework that communities can bounce off. And there's some great ideas already in our patch. Our local authority has decided to make everywhere incredible edible, and in support of that have decided to do two things. First, they're going to create an asset register of spare land that they've got, put it in a food bank so that communities can use that wherever they live, and they're going to underpin that with a licence. And then they've said to every single one of their workforce, if you can, help those communities grow and help them maintain their spaces. Suddenly, we're seeing actions on the ground from local government. We're seeing this mainstreamed. We are responding creatively at last to what Rio demanded of us. And there's lots more you could do. I mean, just to list a few. One, please stop putting prickly plants around public buildings. It's a waste of space. Secondly, please create edible landscapes so that our children start to walk past their food day in, day out, on our high streets, in our parks, wherever that might be. Inspire local planners to put the food sites at the heart of the town and the city plan, not relegate them to the edges of the settlements that nobody can see. Encourage all our schools to take this seriously. This isn't a second-class exercise. If we want to inspire the farmers of tomorrow, then please let us say to every school, create a sense of purpose around the importance of the environment, local food and soils. Put that at the heart of your school culture and you will create a different generation. There are so many things you can do, but ultimately, this is about something really simple. Through an organic process, through an increasing recognition of the power of small actions, we are starting at last to believe in ourselves again. And to believe in our capacity, each and every one of us, to build a different and a kinder future. And in my book, that's incredible. Thank you.
I really like what Incredible Edible have done. I really like this idea of the diversity of spaces in which they found to grow food, showing that sometimes you don't need the money to buy a bit of land. I really like this idea of edible garden walks through their town, and I think to the possibility of food bank users and their families doing such a thing. You know, being made aware of certain locations where food's being grown and being able to go pick it themselves, and perhaps even engage in helping to grow it. Now, I differ from Pam in some respects, because growing on such a diversity of spaces, particularly public spaces, really requires a wider community involvement and local politicians to be on board. And I've don't know about Swansea. I can't speak to that. That's not something I can just come out and advocate. I mean, that's the community's call ultimately. But my concern there is that it can come across as a bit combative. And I just feel that in this time we're living through, as I said, it's not the time to take out one's swords and battle, but rather to take sheep and goats and take them to the hill. And in the next slide, there's a gentleman in his YouTube channel called My Family Garden, who's recently done a tour of other people's allotment spaces, more traditional allotment spaces, that I think really epitomises that, really epitomises taking a flock of sheep to hills via growing food and doing it peacefully on private land, on our own property. We can still, with enough people involved, hopefully find enough front garden space, back garden space, and hopefully, God willing, even allotment spaces where we can involve people. The other thing about being able to set up these type of spaces and involve food bank users and families is this sense of dignity. Having spoken to food bank users in the past, a lot of them feel ashamed to have to use a food bank, and so I think when you involve people in growing their own food, that dignity is returned. As Pam says, it's rejuvenating and founding community on some really, really great principles, and as Muslims that really hits home to me. It really touches on what I feel is I'm trying to engender in my heart, particularly when I read Al-Ghazali and others, what type of things they comment on. So on the next slide is a video that the gentleman from My Family Garden has put together from his visit. I've only included a clip there. It's a longer video, and I really, really hope you watch the entire video because it illustrates what growing spaces can be. They could be family spaces where the kids are involved, and I think that would be absolutely fantastic. And inshallah, if I'm able to get the funding to be able to get the land, it's something I really, really want to set up. And I hope you enjoy the following video.
I can see why you spend so much time down here. So when I came down to this, I didn't know what I was expecting. I'd seen some pictures, especially of Nitin driving around in his tractor at school and shifting stuff around there. And when I've come down here and I've seen what he's doing, I'm absolutely blown away. I've taken some real inspiration from it. What he's doing here, it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm blown away by it. And the ethos that he's got with spending time with his family and bringing his family in and getting his girls involved in the gardening. I can't believe it. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I've been here for a few hours and it feels like I've just got here. And yeah, it's just wonderful. I mean, even this pergola, I was thinking, I was looking at this pergola in his shed and I was thinking, this is the thing that I'm trying to do in my garden. And now I've seen this is exactly what I'm going to be doing in my garden. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Like these paths, they've had so much wood chip on it. I could dig, you could grow in this. It's just lovely, it's absolutely lovely. When I've been digging the soil with my hands, I've been digging the bare soils with my hands, and it's just an amazing piece of land. Is what he's done with it. Little touches like this where he's bringing in little climbing frames and obstacles for his daughters to come and play on. So little slides like this built into the tree. You can't beat it. It's just amazing. Oh, I'm really blown away. I'm really blown away. There's some real inspiration. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I spent a few £100 buying one of those wooden climbing frames for my kids. And I was thinking, if I had something like this, they'd be much happier with this than they would with that thing. And the same with this, they'd be much happier with this kind of frame than they would be with any climbing frame that you can buy from the shops. And it's proper solid as well. It's not moving anywhere. This place has actually opened my eyes quite a bit. You're sharing this out with people on Facebook. You should be teaching, you should be showing people, and I'm sure that loads of people come to you to get inspiration, because I really have, and
no, very kind.
I think it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. If anyone is in the Birmingham area, you should come and check this place out. And the guy's absolutely wonderful as well. He'll spend some time with you, share his knowledge, share some of the tips. And he's sending me away with, I came here empty-handed, and the guy's sending me away with bags full of plants. I don't even know what I'm going to do with more squash and more. I said I haven't grown asparagus for the first time. He's giving me some asparagus grounds. Look at that. So we'll see. I'm well happy. I'm really glad I came down. I really am. So I'm actually a little bit sad closing this video because I really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed being here, and yeah, I am a little bit sad closing it, but I've got to get home. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. As-salamu alaykum wa rahmatullah.
I really like that garden too, and I was also so impressed with the integration of the family elements, the way the children are involved. Little play spaces are integrated into those allotments. And when I close my eyes, I imagine the food bank users, families of children coming down and working them, bringing their kids down and family down, outside in the fresh air, producing wholesome foods. I really hope some of you click on that link and are able to watch the full video, because the gentleman whose garden it is, he talks about his raspberry plants, how his children are voracious eaters of raspberries, and he talks about how he doesn't need to give them vitamin pills. They get all their nutrition from the fresh food grown there. The issue we see with processed foods and canned foods that are handed out at food banks is they're actually low in nutritional value. The canning process removes key nutrients and vitamins. And in time of pandemics, really want people to have the best quality food possible and to have a really high nutritional content so their immunity systems are stronger. And when you look at the stats of those who are dying and coming down really, really ill, it's usually people on the poor end of the spectrum, people who really don't have access to just fresh food. That's the time we're living in now, whereby fresh food is extremely hard to come by. I think I've moved a long way from trying to bring down some tomatoes to talking about what I would like to do and type of things I'm personally working on. I think it'd be absolutely brilliant if more people could be involved in growing in their own gardens and somehow creating these edible food walks like we saw of Pam talk about, so that food bank users can, when the food's in season, just get a simple bowl of salad. Well, one person is growing lettuce, another tomatoes, another cucumbers, people sharing seeds and kind of reproducing community on these very, very beautiful principles, very Islamic principles, well, as much as, my knowledge of Islam extends to. One final thought I was thinking the other day, and again going back to this gentleman and his children's voracious appetite for raspberries, it'd be absolutely wonderful to see some fruiting bushes put in the mosque front garden. I noticed you guys are putting some palm trees and stuff. That would be absolutely wonderful to see. But again, that's not my call. All I can do, and the gentleman in my family garden, he's a very knowledgeable, someone who I'd definitely talk to if anyone wants to move ahead with projects like this, is that for teachers these days we can reach brothers and sisters from the east to the west via PowerPoint presentations, YouTube. That's the nature of the time we're living. But it's a cool, isn't it, to try and live a slightly different way and address some of these really terrible issues over access to fresh food at the core, the root problems, and to try and provide the infrastructure there for people to overcome them. So, you know where I am. You've got my email. You can contact me if you've got any questions, and we need to arrange some better logistics for me bringing down tomatoes, such as when food bank users usually receive their food parcels, so I can drop down tomatoes in a timely fashion. And if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to drop me an email, a phone call, or we can talk on Zoom or Skype. And I will try and make it down. I'll try and get over my own personal fears and make it out of the house once in a while and come talk to you all in person. So anyway, thanks for listening and for following this presentation. As-salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.